Well, Vivian, would you like to begin? I think, we can, others may join us, but I think it's
Sure,
time.
I'd love to. And it's when Kathy and I planned this series of alumni lunch and learns, we tried to think about the topics that were either signature programs for Wesleyan, things that you didn't know about, or the things that were just so fundamental to who we are. And this is one of those. Well, this is all of those actually. It's both it's a signature program. It's also some things you might not know about, and it's just fundamental to who we are, and that is faith and service. So it's my pleasure to introduce three wonderful colleagues to you. The first one is Tyler Schwaller, the Reverend Dr. Tyler Schwaller. Tyler is the Ackerman Hurdle chaplain and assistant professor of religious studies. And Tyler comes to us from Harvard with a master's of divinity and a doctor of theology. And we are, Tyler came in 2017, right? Tyler, that was your first fall year. And we're so delighted to have Tyler on our campus. Next, I'll introduce Melissa Rodriguez. Melissa is a double Wesleyan graduate and a Mercer graduate. Wow, how did she fit all that in just a few years? Well, she graduated from Wesleyan in 2016, right, Melissa? With double majors in psychology and music. She went on to Mercer and got a master's degree in music and vocal performance, and had some wonderful starring roles, including one in Mexico, right, Melissa? You did Carmen, right? I remember that. And then Melissa came back to Wesleyan and earned, she was in the first graduating class for our industrial organizational psychology master's degree. And in the midst of all that, she came to us to be the assistant director of the Lane Center for Service and Leadership, and now is the director of the Lane Center for Service and Leadership. And the most recent one is Kaya Jennings. Kaya has been on our staff for maybe 3 weeks. And she already has made an indelible impression on us, and we're so delighted to have her. Kaya comes to us with a Master of Divinity from Virginia Union, a Master in Sacred Theology from Boston University, and she's currently working on a Doctor of Ministry at Duke University. She has experience as a pastor, as a youth pastor, in many areas of ministry and public service. In her young life, she has excelled in all of those things. These are three wonderful young adults who bring so much to Wesleyan, and I'm going to turn the program over to them so they can tell you about faith and service at Wesleyan.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be starting us off today, but before I get started with our presentation, I just wanted to say that I feel very at home among all of you Wesleyan alumni. As President Fowler mentioned, I am one myself. I moved around closer to 10 years ago to join Wesleyan and from North Carolina, and really quickly felt integrated into the world of Wesleyan and Macon, with the different types of leadership opportunities that the school had to offer. But then when I went to Mercer, I met my fiance, who is a music minister in the Methodist faith. He's currently at Liberty United Methodist Church. And that solidified my roots even deeper to the Methodist world, to Macon. And I'm just very excited to be talking to you all about the Lane Center. So I'm going to share my presentation for you, and you'll be delighted to hear from all of us. Let's see if I can. So as President Fowler mentioned, we'll be talking about faith and service. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the Lane Center first, because I have gotten to experience different iterations of the Lane Center during my time in Macon. And the most recent is that we are now, when we started in 2002, we were dedicated to service and civic engagement in the greater Macon area. And in the last 5 or so years, we've melded with other opportunities, other departments on campus in order to create more of an intersection, strengthen the intersection between our students' involvement, their commitment to community service, and their leadership. We found that a lot of our students on our small campus weren't just committed to service, but if they were really active servant leaders, they were also club presidents. And if they were club presidents, it means they were excelling academically as well. And they were overlapped so much that we thought, how can we synthesize these three areas to really create continuity and to create growth in their leadership development? So now the Lane Center oversees student involvement, which is our campus clubs and our student organizations. We oversee service, which still includes our servant leader program, our WOW-A-Day Day of Service, and our general service initiatives. And we also oversee leadership. So we help with the coordination of the experiential learning opportunities that the Certificate of Social Change has. I don't know if you all have heard of the Certificate of Social Change, but it's a new certificate program that is rooted in civic engagement and rooted in the social change model for leadership development. So we do that, and we also have Student Government Association. So a small department covering a lot of big areas, but what we try to do is strengthen the way that they intersect. So the Lane Center is me, director, and Kaya, who's our new faith and service coordinator. And through that, she has been able to bridge the gap between what it means to serve our greater Macon community and also what it means to serve from a place of faith, from heart, and using a lot of the very authentic leadership principles that we try to instill in our student leaders. So she's going to talk a little bit about bridging the gap, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about just service in the last couple of years. So our past service events, things that we've done, we have our AMKT Christmas Kindness, our Aunt Maggie's Kitchen Table. We have a Christmas toy drive for them. Some of you were really gracious and have donated toys over the last few Christmases. And what we've done in the past is we collect all of these toys and we give families in the Macon Housing Authority, we give them the opportunity to shop for their Christmas gifts for their children and for their families. And the reason that we've done that as a model different than how traditional toy drives go is because our previous Lane Center director, Jill Amos, who I'm sure you all know, she's an alumna as well, and now she works in the Office of Disability and Advocacy Services. She really created this model for the Christmas kindness that is rooted in families having agency and having power over deciding how to provide Christmas gifts for their family, how to give them those resources without necessarily integrating some of the feelings that come with donations and charity, some shame or a lack of agency, a feeling of pity, which unfortunately is sometimes rooted in how we give. And flipping that on its head to give families the opportunity to shop at nominal prices for these gifts so that they're still being able to provide what they see is fit for, what they see best fit for their families. So we've done that every Christmas. We weren't able to do it last December because of COVID, but we did it the year before and it was great. We've had our biannual WOW-A-Day, which maybe some of you have participated in. Again, because of COVID, we weren't able to do that in the fall, but we are doing it this spring and it's open to alumni. So if any of you local alumni are interested in signing up, send me an email. I'll put my email address in the chat. We'd be happy to have you serve with us. We have 7 community partners. It's going to be on March 20th, so just in a couple of weeks. In the morning, and we're really excited about that. That'll be Kaya's first WOW-A-Day. So she's getting to learn about all the intricacies of planning and coordinating and talking to community partners. We've had Arboretum Trail Day, where we send students to work with Jim Ferrari, Dr. Jim Ferrari in the Arboretum, spruce up the trails, really continue making that area beautiful. We incorporated MLK Day of Service last year, and we work toward really educating our students on the different servant leader principles that Dr. King has exemplified in his life. And 2 years ago, we were able to do that by serving a local community partner which we will be serving again. They're called Macon Periods Easier. And what they do is they work toward ending period poverty in Macon-Bibb County by providing period packs for the different Bibb County schools so that young students aren't having to buy their own because they can be very expensive and sometimes they're not able to afford them. So that was something that we do, and we try to, you all might have seen or might have attended Tanya Parker's Day of Civic Engagement this past year for MLK Day of Service. It was really special. And Service Saturdays, trying to create one Saturday a month where our students are dedicated to serving. It helps them go out to their own community. It helps them really identify community needs in Macon. And it helps us understand how our students like to serve, because a lot of our students, the way that they serve has shifted over the last few years. I remember when I was a student, there were a lot of things that I enjoyed, like being outdoors, planting trees. I really like working with my hands. And now it's really hard to get our students to work with their hands. I think they are more, they care about their social relationships. So they want to work with children and they want to work with communities and have more face-to-face conversations. And so it's really unique to see how different generations, and these are gross generalizations, of course, but it's really interesting to see how different classes internalize what service means to them. And so that's what we really try to cater to for Service Saturdays. What do our servant leaders want? Where can we put them, and how can they represent Wesleyan in Macon? So our current ones coming up, a lot of the same, you'll see the same things coming up. And we've introduced a couple of new ones. So Cookies and Cards is a pretty recurring service initiative on campus where we partner with local hospices to have our students create holiday cards for them. So we've done Christmas, we've done Valentine's Day. Our students were trying to push for Halloween cards, and I had to say, I don't know that that's a thing. So we try to use different holidays to connect our students to some of the different residential hospice communities that we have. And then the most recent addition is our Economic Opportunity Council is with everything moving virtual, they're hosting a story reading. So recording students reading stories and being able to send those virtually to the different families and different children around the area. So those are some of the ones that we've incorporated this semester. We're trying to get creative with all of the challenges we've experienced with COVID, but we're still really trying to strengthen service, especially now more than ever, and instill those values in our students. So I'm going to let Tyler talk about religious and spiritual life, and then you'll hear from Kaya about how she bridges those two things between us.
Great, thank you so much, Melissa. I thought I would just begin by talking about our core commitments that shape the spirit of programming that we put forward in religious and spiritual life. So number one is to foster communal care. So regardless of students' own religious, spiritual, or secular identities, how can we be a center for creating space for connection, for mutual encouragement and support? So this is a core value that I have brought to this work. And then the second, of course, is to encourage spiritual growth through various kinds of religious and spiritual life programming, and we'll talk about some of the specific programs in each of these areas. So first, thinking about communal care more broadly, I've listed some of the things that we've been active in most recently. I realized as I was going through pictures, like trying to find things that we've done just to show you students gathering, I am really, really bad at thinking to take pictures when people are actually together. So on the right, you'll see one of the disastrous moments, not disastrous, just messy in the process of making food for students. And this is connected with the first thing listed, community table. So the spirit of community table is to nourish bodies through providing homemade food and to nourish spirit through providing space for people to connect, to just check in with one another and engage in conversations. Community tables honestly have been some of my most meaningful experiences at Wesleyan. It's often a small group of 5 to maybe 15 Students and sometimes faculty and staff also join. We took a bit of a break because of COVID. So this is the picture of the kitchen is from a pre-COVID time that was a more elaborate sort of meal. But with Melissa and Kaya's encouragement and help, we have brought back community table this semester in a sort of more limited COVID-friendly way. And before this, engaged in some virtual check-ins. So that spirit of community table was alive even throughout this time of COVID by having some virtual community times to check in with one another, talk about how we're making meaning and making it through our days. The second thing, in the fall, I hosted along with Tanya Parker, our Chief Diversity Officer, a student support group following the book Love and Rage, The Path of Liberation Through Anger. So in light of so much tension and distress in this country and in our personal lives, we wanted to give students a space to identify what can be upsetting and to honor that and to tend to rage. So the spirit of this book, Love and Rage, is to hold these things together, to say, when we're angry, that's not something just to like get over or to say, just be happy, or like, it's not really okay to be angry, but to say, maybe there's something we can learn from this, and that beneath rage often is hurt. And when we are hurt, if we aren't intentional about tending to that hurt, we aren't making space for healing. So Tanya and I led students through a reading of this book and through just some time of check-in, which was a really powerful and meaningful way to reflect on what's up in students' lives and to give them tools for processing their anger in ways that both honor the anger and can be held within a framework of love and care and healing. In that same spirit, we've begun an LGBTQ plus support group. So that's, I think, particularly important considering some of the religious and spiritual stresses that LGBTQ people can experience. So that's why I connect this here with religious and spiritual life, to provide support that is both religious and spiritual and is aimed at supporting LGBTQ plus students in general. That group has been meeting weekly, and sometimes I'll forget to send the reminder, and they're always so good about saying, are we meeting? And out of that space of support, students have felt encouraged both to come out with each other and to support one another in their family and community life, but they've also been empowered to connect around other kinds of things. So I believe there's some new student groups that have just been approved through SGA that actually began as conversations in this support group. So that's been really exciting and meaningful. The other thing I want to highlight is that at Wesleyan in general, we are concerned with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And one of my roles as a faculty member starting this year has been to serve as the faculty liaison for equity and inclusion. So I've been working with Tanya Parker also on this broader based work. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this, number one, because it's important to our life at Wesleyan, as a majority of our students are students of color, as we live in a national context where we are confronting issues of continued racial injustice and strive as a community to foster equity and inclusion. So I wanted to share a little bit about actually how this connects with my own role as chaplain, because I see these as very much integrated. And in this line, I wanted to share just a bit about the concept of transformative justice. So I've shared with you a slide from Generation 5, and Generation 5 is a group that is working to end child sexual abuse within 5 generations. And they begin with a framework of transformative justice that says that our current systems of accountability are failing us. And so they've listed a sort of series of asking, first, how can we tend to harm that's been done? How do we name the harm that's been done? So that's why you'll see number one, a concern for safety, for healing, for agency. So a lot of work within transformative justice, like Generation 5, has begun in communities dealing particularly with sexual abuse and violence, but this can be broadly applied. So when people experience harm, how do we, number one, name that there has been harm that's been done? And then number two, work for a genuine kind of accountability that keeps people safe and that offers tools to ensure that such harms are not repeated. And that goes to number three, that this is community work, that this is never just about individuals, but it's about how we show up for one another in community and create the conditions within our community such that we can identify harm and share responsibility and accountability so that we can get to number four, transforming the community and the social conditions that create and perpetuate violence so that those conditions are not repeated. And so this is a spirit that is very much grounded in my own sense of spirituality and my own faith. And that's why I included here this short snippet of scripture. This is a moment when Jesus is talking about judgment. So he is teaching the disciples, shortly before his death, sort of preparing them for what is to come. And he says, basically, here are the standards for judgment. When we come to a moment where you will give an account for your life, the question will be, have you given food to those who are hungry? Have you given drink to those who are thirsty? Have you welcomed the stranger? Have you given clothing to the naked? Have you visited the sick? Have you visited the imprisoned? And what I think is so important here, and what I think is helpful to disentangle, part of the work I try to do with students as chaplain is to disentangle some of their assumptions about judgment. Students will often come with a kind of fear that they are doing things wrong and will be judged in the end. And I say, this is actually what Jesus says. Are you caring for those who are vulnerable? Can you see what the need is? And are you working to help meet that need? And so this is a spirit that I bring to our equity and inclusion work at Wesleyan to say, when our students are calling out for us to be more equitable, to bring about racial justice, to create and foster a truly inclusive environment, I come with a spirit of asking, can we first identify that there is that need, and then can we just show up and meet that? And I'm happy to report that I really see these conversations growing at Wesleyan. This is not new work. This is years in the making. And I was sharing with President Fowler recently, we were emailing also with Tanya Parker and just saying, I'm really feeling this spirit that this collective work is being shared, and it seems like we have new possibilities for tending to the hurt that is real and seeking true transformation and healing. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Sorry, I've been talking too much. So the last point is practices of spiritual growth. Number one, as many of you all know and remember so fondly, Reverend Hurdle, he began the Wesleyan Disciples, and this group continues to meet weekly to do Bible study, to practice other kinds of spiritual disciplines. You'll see a picture of the labyrinth, which provides a kind of walking meditation. We support one another and encourage spiritual growth in connection to service. Then I've listed some of the other student-led groups. I actually was looking at the calendar for the last month, and I was going to give you some numbers, like in the last month, we had this many activities, but I got tired from counting. There is a Bible study. There is a, like Christianity 101. There are large group worship experiences. There is something happening every single day of the week at Wesleyan. And a lot of that is student-led, which I think is incredibly important. And you can see here a range of some of our groups who are leading that work. Finally, I just wanted to highlight some areas for growth. In the past, we have had some really strong work in interfaith engagement, especially at times when we have had significant numbers of international students who have brought different faiths into our community. This is one of these areas that I think we can bolster once again, and we have some students who are interested in that work. I think there are opportunities for leadership in the community. So there's this new Center for Racial and Social Equity and Justice that we are establishing, and we hope to provide spaces for students and some of our faculty and staff to provide spiritual and religious leadership around areas of justice in the community. And then finally, connecting faith and service. And that's where I'll turn it over to Kaya, whom we are so excited to have in the month or so that she's been here. I have felt my own spirit enlivened, and she is a constant source of energy and ideas and is helping us to bridge this gap, connecting faith and service.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so good to be here with you. I've experienced so much warmth here on Wesleyan's campus that you all make a Virginia girl feel like home. So I'm excited about doing the work here. I always say, especially in classes that I'm in at Duke, I always say I'm licensed and ordained Baptist, but I love Methodist institutions, and Wesleyan has become another institution that is close to my heart. And so I'm so grateful just to be here with you today. So I want to talk about bridging faith and service. I am blessed to be able to work with two amazing human beings, Melissa Rodriguez and Tyler Schwaller. I'm so grateful for the work that they do for our students here. And if you take a look at the bridge that's on the PowerPoint here, you'll see that's the George Washington Bridge. So it bridges together New York and New Jersey, and the people go back and forth to do what they need to do in each state. They travel, they go home, they go to work. You know, that bridge is what connects these two places together. And I feel like that's what my position does here at Wesleyan. It helps our students to travel back and forth safely, to navigate where they need to go between faith and service. And my office, my position helps them to do that. So the compassion that we show here at Wesleyan with our students helps them to cross over into their destiny. And that is something that I truly believe. So we can go forward. So these are some of the characteristics that I am being intentional with my position about curating as we go along. Spiritual development is very important to me with our students, for them to understand and realize who they are as people, for them to be able to walk clearly into what they've been called and ordained to do. I feel like having a spiritual grounding and understanding the essence in which they have created to be in this world is important. So spiritual development, effective leadership skills, communication and advocacy, right? So that's not only for the community, but that's also for self as they grow and navigate and move throughout the world in service, but also in faith spaces, that as people, they have to learn how to do that for themselves, to be their own advocates, to step up and say, hey, you know, I don't think this is right, or maybe we should try something this way, and understanding that their voice does matter. It's important to me that they understand that. Collaboration, personal well-being, community involvement, calling and career discernment. I kind of split this up because sometimes people say, you know, my career is my calling, and then others can say, well, this is my career, but I'm called to this. So sometimes that's separate. So I put those as two separate things. Creative, inclusive environments is necessary, especially in the world in which we live in. We understand that being an individual, that there are different backgrounds, different things that make us people, and just making sure that our students here at Wesleyan are prepared to create space where everyone is affirmed, everyone is loved. I really take seriously some of those Methodist tenets with doing no harm, right? And doing good, and actually being merciful, showing mercy, right? So I want our students to live into that, and that leads into holistic growth. I don't believe our students should just be grow in one particular area, but in all areas that make them whole entire beings. And I think it's beautiful as we continue to do the work here. I'm starting to see our students open up, even in COVID land. They're becoming just these beautiful human beings who I know will take charge of the places in which they're going to be called to and be change agents. And I'm just saying to you as alumni, I know you all are proud of the people who are coming out of Wesleyan and who are actually taking charge and doing great work. So continuing to support our students' growth by creating more service opportunities. Me and Melissa are in it right now to creating those service opportunities to make sure our students have access to community partnerships that you'll see down there, so that they can be well equipped to go into the world. I know even through my own undergrad experiences, they honed in on academics, but when I got out of undergrad, I realized that, oh, I have to talk in boardrooms. Oh, I have to figure out community partnerships. I have to learn how to do this. And here at Wesleyan, we're committed with allowing these service opportunities to be kind of the fortes for our students as they go out and to do the work they need to do. Expanding upon small group models, and that's something me and Tyler are going to work on, especially with our wonderful faith groups, giving them the opportunity to grow and also take more leadership and ownership of the space that they're in. So that's important. Once again, rebuilding community projects and partnerships, and curate intentional experiences with on-campus programming. How I am as a person, I don't believe we do things just to do them, right? And even as my years as the youth minister, I felt that, if we take the kids to the bowling alley, it's just not about having fun. It should be something intentional that goes with the programming. So if we're going to the bowling alley, we are learning how to communicate. We're learning how to work together. We're learning, it's always something underlining with programming. Even if it's fun, we can advertise it as fun, but it's going to be some type of intentional learning perspective that we want our students here to take with them. So those are the things that I'm committed to with helping Tyler and helping Melissa to be this bridge for our students to go back and forth to do what they need to do. And I am so excited because you have not seen anything yet. If you thought you saw something, oh, just wait. Good things are coming to you, right? So questions, comments, and concerns, please feel free. We are looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
If any of you have any questions or are curious about any of our specific programs, I know we're at 12:36, but I'd love to answer any questions. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Ruth.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is, I guess, to Tyler. What is the makeup of the Wesleyan Disciples now? Is it just the MKM and Pitt scholars, or are there other students who are part of it too? And the second part of that question is, in that listing of all the faith groups, is there any overlap, or is it 5 separate groups of people?
Great questions. So the primary makeup of the disciples right now are the MKM and Pitt's scholars. And then we have some additional Wesleyan disciple scholarships that we're able to offer for students who come in and maintain sort of regular engagement. So that's the core group. And we're thinking about how now to broaden that back out to create more sort of whole campus community experiences. And that's something I've been thinking through with Kaya. She mentioned that kind of starting with small groups and using those as connection points to do larger on-campus or larger campus programming. But yeah, MKM, Pitts, and then a few smaller Wesleyan Disciple scholarships. And then the second program, there is some overlap. This is part of what's really interesting with these different faith groups that are listed. There are a few students who really are involved in all of those groups. And then some find a particular home in each. What's fascinating to me is it's not often related to students' own denominational backgrounds. So for instance, right now, RUF, the Reformed University Fellowship, I think because they have a leader who has really connected with students, that's one of the most active groups. I don't think many of them are Presbyterian, but they do, morning prayer, they do some coffee and donuts, they have some large group worship experiences. So it's fascinating to think about. I think our current dynamic is one that's far less denominational, even as these groups come out of and are supported by different denominations.
Any other questions? Comments?
This is not a question, it's just a comment. Thank you all, the three of you, for your presentations. They were wonderful. And I just have to say how great it is to see how far Wesleyan has come in terms of diversity and inclusion since many of us were students there. It's just wonderful to see. And we talk these days about things that just wouldn't even been mentioned back way back. And it's just wonderful, the work that all of you are doing, and appreciate the leadership from President Fowler and from Ruthie so much in terms of moving the college ahead in so many ways. So thank you all.
I was lucky that I got to have both. I had Ruth Knox as my president and Vivian Fowler as my provost. So now I get to have President Fowler, and it's really great. I agree. I think even since my graduation, we've evolved a lot in the last 5-6 years. I think that's been really great.
I have one more question, if I may. Well, actually two. Where are y'all physically located now?
I am in, I'm trying to think of what it was. It used to be the Writing Center when I was a student here, but it's the first level of OSP right next to the campus bookstore. And we're right beside the Center for Career Development. We have kind of a big shared space here. And Kaya is located in the Belk Suites over by Jill Amos's office, but she and I work together closely here. And then Tyler kind of bounces back between the chapel and the and religious studies department, which is in Tate, right, Tyler?
Yeah, and that leads to my last question, and then I promise I'll shut up. Do we still have a relationship with Anthony Holmes? And I mean, what used to be our home base for Aunt Maggie's Kitchen Table?
That's a great question. Yes and no. So we have a really great relationship with the Macon Housing Authority as a whole, but Anthony Holmes changed directors 3 years ago, and that director came in and kind of nixed a lot of the programs that we had been committed to doing. And we found out later it wasn't just us, it was a few local programs as well that served at Anthony Holmes. They cut ties there. I think that director really wanted to change things. And then that director left and a new director came in just last year. And we haven't had a chance to talk to him very much, but I'm not sure what his new ideas or intentions are for new programs. So what we decided to do was shift our Aunt Maggie's focus to the Macon Housing Authority as a whole versus just specifically focusing on Anthony Holmes. So we have a service initiative in April creating parent packs for parents of children ages 0 to 5, and that's going to serve Macon Housing Authority as a whole. And then we'll just try to keep touching base with Anthony Holmes to see if they're interested in making any new connections. But yeah.
Right. So the Christmas present and then the parent packs are both Housing Authority, and that's sort of the Aunt Maggie's Kitchen Table outreach.
Yeah, and thankfully we were able to do Aunt Maggie's Christmas Kindness with Anthony Holmes in 2019 still. But then when COVID hit, I think they got a new director. And so we're still unsure of what December is going to look like, if we can expand that into doing the Housing Authority as a whole, or if we'll just focus on Anthony Homes, should we be able to establish a relationship with their new director.
It's just that I would hate for that to go away because it's so long. I mean, that predates me. I mean, that Catherine Meeks started that, gosh, in the late 90s, I think. So anyway, I hope we can continue that relationship, and I appreciate what y'all are doing to try to make it happen.
Yeah, me too. We're hoping it can work. And that's a little bit about, when Kaya was talking about how our own Macon community has really shifted in the last 10 years. And we've been working on creating new community partners, but really trying to empower our existing community partners to continue connecting with us. And I think there's been a little bit of turnover in a lot of those partnerships. So we're hoping we won't lose faith there. We'll keep on working to create opportunities.
And their new director, Mr. Hooks, is the new director there. I've called and left some messages trying to get in contact with him. But now, since I'm new coming in and understanding what's near and dear to your heart, Miss Nada, I'm gonna make it my business to try to figure out what me and Mr. Hooks can do. So you'll be hearing from me. Let's talk about it. If you want to have anything you want to share with me regarding any past experiences, because I don't believe I can go into the future unless I know what happened in the past. And so I take all of that with me as we create a better future. So whatever you need, you let me know.
I'll be happy to do that. The two things I care most about are the Wesleyan Disciples and Aunt Maggie's kitchen table. So thank y'all for helping us carry on with both of them. I appreciate it.
You'll be happy to know that the third thing, which is Washboard Band, is still alive and well too. So I don't know if that helps.
I have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Beverly. You go on, Beverly. You go.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I have a quick question. Great job. Thank y'all so much. And I guess you kind of touched on it a little bit. What is your vision? Wesleyan's transformed a lot since I've been there. And like you all mentioned, Macon is transforming. So do you have a vision as far as how you're going to keep up with that transformation so we're not behind the ball?
Yes, absolutely. As far as the Lane Center goes, I think what I found, one of the big things that I found in the classes that we teach, because we will teach some first year experience classes and also some leadership courses, is that our students that are coming in right now, we really want to instill in them a hunger for identifying and serving community needs. But one of the things that we found, especially with our students coming in, is that they're still working on identifying and clarifying their own values, and they're still working on trying to figure out their own leadership styles and undoing some of what they come into their time at Wesleyan knowing and what they've inherited, and they're really trying to figure that out. So we're hoping for to do a little bit more work in developing their authentic leadership skills in order to have them identify the needs that they really are called to and are impassioned by. And that will tell us a little bit more about what they want to serve. And once we can do that, then we use the social change leadership development model. And that one really focuses on what they call the 7 C's of community engagement, and then teaching them, now that you know a little bit more about what you want, what are the skills that you have that can serve these needs, and having them identify those. And when we are able to do that, we can get a better sense of where in the community we can send them. And so meanwhile, what we're doing is trying to build up our community partners to really identify some new projects that are better suited to what our students are excited about. So we have a few new community partners as well that have started, and that have one of them that I can think of is the Brookdale Warming Center. It's a warming center that was started by their director, Steve Bell. And it was originally just a warming center established for the colder months, November and December, but they recently got a grant to continue because it was such a a prevalent need in making, that now we're hoping to establish some more long-term service opportunities where our students can go and serve regularly, so that even if there is change in some of those local nonprofits, we are still the guiding and strong leaders there, so that if new directors come in, we don't disappear, but instead they adapt. So I'm really hoping that as far as service goes, that's the direction that we'll be headed in, is just a little bit more continuity in our community partnerships. And then Tyler, I don't know if you want to talk about the 4-year plan, or if you want.
I'll say a couple things just quickly. Actually, this connects with the question that Ruth asked earlier, thinking about students coming in, not having the same kind of denominational sensibilities that have been important in generations past. That's shifted some of how we do our work, but also like we exist within structures and want to value our own Methodist heritage. So for instance, Kaya and I met recently with Millie and Andrea, thinking about how we can be grounded in our own sense of Methodist Wesleyan heritage, in particular thinking about like personal holiness and social holiness as connected, and working with the Pitts Foundation, which provides such generous funding supporting Methodist students and institutions. And so we have been thinking about a kind of model that builds upon what we have right now with like the Wesleyan Disciples cohort, and Millie had some other suggestions for other scholarship cohorts, and using those small student groups as spaces to cultivate leadership opportunities on a social change model that Melissa is talking about. But particularly with our faith groups, thinking about how that's grounded in students' own sense of their values, how we can help support their spiritual development, and then give them opportunities for leadership in the community. And so it's in some ways, I'm like seeing a bunch of Venn diagrams in my head. And one of the ways that connects, and part of what's exciting having Kaya in this role, is it's actually brought Melissa and I together to collaborate more, which is not because we couldn't have sooner, but we can sort of get into our own areas. And then with Kaya's entry, it's like, hey, we all can do work together. She's helped bridge some gaps. And we were talking about thinking of through, along with this sort of cohort model, small groups that we're mentoring and supporting in spiritual development and leadership development, if we created a kind of 4-year plan that emphasized in the first year, here's how we can encourage students to think about, what are their backgrounds, what are they bringing to the table, how do they understand their own values, and then working up through by their 4th year, a kind of self-directed leadership, and giving students opportunities to take what they've learned and what skills and capacities they've developed to go and do the work in a kind of self-empowered way. So that's one of the ways that we're thinking about supporting our student population in a kind of targeted, focused way with intentionality, that builds that sort of scaffolding such that by the time they graduate, they're able to connect their own values and sense of self, and religious, spiritual identity with the work that they do in the world.
Hi, this is Beverly. Really a comment and then a question. The three of you bring such diversity to the work that you're doing, your backgrounds, but your interests as well, and perhaps even your ages make a difference. At the same time, I just wonder a little bit, and Kaya, you said, I think you asked if there were things that had been done in the past you'd like to know about, and I don't want to dwell on that, but I will ask a kind of question related to that after I make a comment. The idea of student convocations has been around for a long time at Wesleyan. It was a very strong tradition for many, many years. And in that respect, there were so many wonderful deliveries of programs, individuals who in their own right were very notorious, one might say. Some were very controversial. And all were accepted at Wesleyan. And these were opportunities for students to reach out beyond the confines of Wesleyan. And I say reaching out because I think I heard each of you say, maybe not in the specific words, but you wanted to have a broader reach. And I'm wondering to what extent that broader reach might be accommodated in inviting various people to campus who have national or international credentials, just opening up so that we don't become so insulated in our thinking. And of course, you all are doing your best, and so are the faculty, the administrators, and the staff in these days in particular with such restrictions, but opening up the minds of students to different ways of thinking, different ways of hearing, different messages, and so forth. So as the campus opens up, do you all have any plans for doing such things? That's my question, finally.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. Thankfully, we, even with the campus still not totally open, we've still been able to do that a little bit, but you're right that it's the most important part too is not keeping our students, within the Wesleyan bubble. And this is something I found going straight into graduate school at Mercer, is that when I got there, I expected every woman I met to be my best friend. And that was not the case. That I found that there was not a lot of those things that I experienced at Wesleyan. I thought, I'm not at Wesleyan anymore. And you're right that we really want to encourage our students to think about leadership and to think about service from, at the local level, at the regional level, at the national level, and at the global level. And we've been able to, through convocations, to do that a little bit. So we have one lined up in April that we are inviting what I call her a citizen artist and change maker. Her name is Alicia Lee. And she is a really great opera singer who actually became a Kennedy Citizen Fellow and change maker, specifically in creating girl choirs through a program called El Sistema, which is a Latin American model that uses music to really help students in poverty and students who might not have access to the traditional classical music world. And she did that with choir. She brought it to the United States, and she's coming to campus to talk to us. I'll put her website in the chat in case you all want to read a little bit more about her life, her activism, and her use of her niche skill set in opera to be an agent of social change. And she's coming to talk to our students through a convocation in April. But I absolutely agree that finding more opportunities to do this more frequently, maybe have external workshops from other people in the area, I think that's something that we can definitely build on. Because we are hoping that our students can reflect on this a little bit more from an outward perspective versus inward.
Ms. Beverly, thank you for your question that you raised. I'm so excited that you are bringing this to the forefront, because this is something that me and Tyler are actually working on as well, along with the amazing Millie and Andrea. I'm so grateful for them as well, about creating space to have these conversations and our students have conversation partners that are not from their backgrounds, that are different, to bring in people with the knowledge and also the experience to help enrich our knowledge here at Wesleyan. So we're actively trying to do that now. And I think if you hang on, you're gonna see some things coming out, and you're really gonna love what's gonna be coming our way. So just thank you for just being in that vein. And please, if you feel free to contact me if you have any recommendations or anything that you all would like to see. I would definitely love to hear more from you. Thank you.
And at that, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut the conversation for today, but it's been a wonderful discussion. I want to thank each one of you for zooming in to hear from our own faith and service agents of change, Melissa, Kaya, and Tyler. You've been fantastic in informing us and inspiring us to know more about how we as alumni can help Wesleyan in these changes as well.